You ready, Diane? Good evening, everybody. Let's get started. Diane, could you recognize any city officials who are in attendance this evening?
Yes, Mr. President Pro Tem. Mayor Jamie Slutes. Safety Service Director Renee Baker. Chief Counsel Earl Wise Jr. Director of Development Ted Hernkane. Fire Chief Matthew Heck. Income Tax Budget Director Lori Katagides-Boron. And Health Department Commissioner Terry Argent. Is there anyone from administration I missed? That's it, President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Diane. And let the record reflect that all 9 members of council are in attendance tonight, as well as Council President Mike Slater.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie. Chief Deputy Auditor Stephanie Myers. Apologies.
All right, let's begin with community development. Councilwoman Creamer?
Thank you, Mr. Lombardi. I have one new item. Please prepare an ordinance authorizing, directing, and ratifying the disposition of certain city-owned non-productive land not needed for municipal purposes under Chapter 166, Land Reutilization Program of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Massillon, Ohio. The properties to be sold are attached. So we have the attachment that contains 17 parcels, and to my understanding, these parcels are made up of new parcels that have come to the city, along with the older ones through round 1 and 2 that have not been purchased. Does anyone have any questions that I can bring up somebody from administration to answer, if need be? I believe this program was implemented possibly a year or 2 ago. I can't recall specifically. Mr. Hernkane, would you like to come up? I can't recall if it's been one or two years ago that we implemented?
Spring of '23.
Okay, a year ago, okay. And we've had success with the program.
Yes, to date, we have transferred 13 parcels. There have been 2 rounds of bidding on these parcels. And as Mrs. Creamer stated, Attorney Mack drew up the ordinance that you should have. He did add something that wasn't included on the last iterations of this, which is the phrase "not needed for municipal purposes," since that was a part of the original program that Mrs. Creamer and the former administration worked to put this together. He wanted to make sure that language was in this ordinance and to keep things consistent. As Mrs. Creamer stated also, there are some new parcels on here, but it does include maybe a dozen or so of the prior parcels, so we can keep them all in one list. And as we add more, you'll probably see the same list. You'll see some of the same addresses over and over again until they are sold. But that's, I think, for ease, a good way to do it.
Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. Mr. Hernkane, are these properties that are like beside somebody's home that are vacant and then they can purchase those?
Correct. These are parcels that have been acquired by the city from the county land bank, and they are vacant parcels that are usually in between a residential neighborhood, and when we bid them out, the intent is for interested parties. They don't have to be adjacent property owners, but I think the guidelines do give preference to that. So they are bid out at a cost of $8 per square foot of frontage. You'll see a lot of the dollar amounts at $320 or 400 and some dollars, but they look at the frontage of the parcel, multiply that by 8, and that is the asking price on the bid.
Thank you.
Mr. Cackley.
Mr. Hernkane, how are these properties going to be sold then? Is it through an auction, or is it, how does it take place?
They will be publicly bid through an ad in the newspaper and a posting on our city website.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any additional questions? So if we get approval of this ordinance, do we have a timeline of when they're going to be posted on the website, or this year or next Early part of next year?
Probably within a couple weeks of council approving it.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all I have for community development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Creamer. Economic Development, Councilman Ray.
Thank you, Councilman Lombardi. I have nothing for economic development today. Thank you.
Thank you. Health, Welfare, and Building Regulations, Councilwoman Cunningham.
Nothing further this evening, except that Mr. Ray, Attorney Mack, was to be here tonight to give us a PowerPoint presentation, but he is ill, so it's been moved till the 30th at 5:30. And that's all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cunningham. Parks and Rec, Councilwoman Harwick Smith.
Thank you, Councilman Lombardi. I have nothing for Parks and Recs this evening.
Thank you. I have nothing for Police and Fire this evening. Public Utilities and Environmental, Councilwoman Brian Huth.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I have nothing this evening.
Thank you. Rules, Courts, and Civil Service, Councilman Gregg.
Nothing for rules and courts this evening.
Thank you. Streets, Highways, and Traffic Safety, Councilman Paquile.
Nothing for the streets and highways this evening?
Thank you. And now we're not going to be able to stop him. Finance, Councilman Lewis.
All right. First thing is, I'll go into the budget just so we don't forget about it. As you know, we did table it for the next session of council, which will be Monday, for passage. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the budget itself this evening? Okay. You'll notice in our packets, there is a ordinance in here, or request for legislation says, please prepare an ordinance amending Part 1 Administrative Code under Chapter 181 Income Tax, allocation of funds. And then you're seeing there where they're changing what we call the split, that funds collected should be at 93 and 7 compared to 94 and 6. If you remember last week, I had said there was a little detail that was uncovered that we wanted to clean up before we could move forward with the budget. This was that detail that we needed some more information on. Essentially, the budget that we have in front of us is saying that 93% of the funds that we receive in the 1100 general fund will go to operations, 7% will go into capital. However, our codified ordinance had it that 94% were supposed to go to operations and 6% to capital. So what this does is amend the current codified so that it matches what we are actually budgeting and doing. So we just needed to clean that up before we really could move forward with the budget. So that's all this is. Is there any questions about this in particular? All right. All right, I'll move on to the rest then. Please prepare an ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the general fund, income tax refund, $126,100. So as you guys know, businesses do business. Sometimes they pay their quarterly taxes, whatever, and occasionally they will have to be refunded if they overpay. We do have some businesses that are in a position where they need to be refunded so that we are obligated to pay them back. Those businesses do this through a software program, and then we're notified when everything is processed, and we've recently received some substantial ones come back. So that is what this is related to. Are there any questions related to this? Please prepare legislation to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the fire pension fund to the following accounts. Fire pension funds, $74.64.51 to pay fire pension through the end of the year. Lori, I got a question. If I'm.
About this?
Yes.
That's me.
Oh, that's you? Okay.
Yes, Councilman Lewis?
My only question is, how are we appropriating from the unappropriated balance? So,
You also have to look at the piece that's like a couple behind it. So probably 2 council meetings before, Chief had already appropriated a little bit more into the transfer out fund.
Yes.
So then this piece that's making the transfer from the general fund to the 1210, that's for additional than what was in the original 2024 budget. So they needed more cash, so that 26,000 is the cash, but then what we put in the budget for the 1210, it was only $7,464 short. So the one piece is moving like cash, but the appropriation in the 1210 was higher because we also get money from the real estate taxes. So it's
So in
never
the-
going to be the same number.
So in the 1210, we have the 7464. We're just appropriate to the 1210, 325, 522,
Yeah, we'll have it once if this transfer goes through.
This transfer in first.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Does that make sense, everybody? So we're taking the cash from disability and pension under the 1100 fund, putting it into the transfer in of the 1210, which will then provide us the cash in the 1210 to put it into the fire pension.
Yes.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Whenever you see transfer in and transfer out, it's never easy.
No.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And then Diane, can we do like the transfer in as like section 2 and then the appropriation to the fire pension fund is section 3 in the same ordinance? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Not really.
Okay, well then never mind.
Yeah, I have to send to the county the appropriations, but not the transfers.
All right, well then just make sure the transfer in is first. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Diane?
Sir?
Make sure the transfer in comes first.
Okay.
All right. Please prepare an ordinance to reduce appropriations in the police pension fund in the following accounts. So we're going to reduce the police pension fund by $28.44 and this is needed to zero out the fund by end of year.
1210, okay, that comes first, okay.
Please prepare an ordinance to reduce appropriations State Patrol Fund. We're going to reduce it by $16,437.01 in State Patrol Transfer Law Library and $16,437.06 in the State Patrol Refund to General for a total of $32,874, and this is to zero out for the end of the year. Any questions?
And I can bundle those two together?
This one here?
Yeah, the 2 reductions?
Yeah, it's in all one request.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Now we have a reduction in the tree program by $22,000, putting in the refunds. This has helped take care of the refunds. Now, I did have to call Ms. Katagides-Boron. She gave me an excellent answer today. Thank you. Essentially, this is money that we did move into the tree program this year. They did not receive a lot of interest from the community, so instead of letting that money just sit there and not be used this year, it's being moved over to the refunds to cover our obligations that we have. And then I do believe the plan is to continue to market this program, and hopefully in the spring we will see more interest, possibly due to the time of year. People weren't ready to start to address their concerns with trees. Yes.
That, the piece of legislation you just mentioned, I think one before this one, what was that again?
State Patrol Transfer Law Library,
I don't
State
think
Patrol.
I have that.
Neither do I.
It was the extra one we sent out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the additional legislation email that came out.
Okay,
Yeah. I didn't get it till Friday.
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry
Can you
about that.
print
I'll
that?
make copies for you.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this next one is going to be 6,000 out of salary, recreation, 15,000 out of gas and oil, and 9,500 out of SD revenue sharing. These are all coming out of Parks and Recreation Fund for a total of 30,500 going into income tax. Lori, correct me, or Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, either one. But when we do income tax refunds, obviously, we do have a portion of the tax we collected that goes to parks, and we use them as well to meet the obligation, because they are also obligated to a certain extent to make sure they meet the refunds that are, does that make sense? Please prepare an ordinance authorizing the auditor to pay various 2024 bills that have been received and that will be received by the office between January 1 of 25 and March 31st of 25 out of the 25 appropriations with the various departments of the city of Massillon, Ohio. So we do this every single year. So we are doing business in November and December, or even, in October. We might not receive those invoices until after January 1. So in order to pay them, since it is a service rendered in '24, once we get to January 1, we can only pay out of $25, right? So in order to pay a business for services in '24 out of 25 money, council has to pass this ordinance allowing the auditor to do so. All right, please prepare an ordinance authorizing the Massillon City Clerk or Council to make the monthly lease payments of $127. This only took us 9 months to get to, but we finally got to it. Essentially, it's our copier fee that we get every month that Diane always is putting on there. It's always a time crunch. This is us just giving her the authority, giving her, with the oversight of Mr. Slater, to go ahead and make this recurring payment for us, so that we don't have to keep authorizing it. Now we have some transfers. The first one is from the administration, removing $4,000 in annexation fees, placing it into accumulated sick leave. This is to realign the budget. Please stop me if you have any questions. Police comp paid, reduction $23,000, placing that into uniform allowance to realign the budget to cover expenses in the police uniform allowance through December 2024. Health, reducing salary and wages by $4,000, placing it into supplies. And fire, reducing supplies and materials by $4,500, placing that as service and contracts. Reducing base wage and salary by $23,000, placing $8,000 into comp and $15,000 into overtime, and it's to realign the budget. Does anybody have any questions? Is anybody aware if I missed anything in all that? We are done with finance.
Thank you, Councilman Lewis.
Mr. Ray, do you have I'm sorry.
Allocation of funds. You already mentioned that. Income tax, chapter 181.
That was the
That was
very
the
first
first.
one we did.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. I wonder I was off track.
That's all I have. We're adjourned.
Are we doing the Christmas thing next week? You want to announce that?
That was good.
Excuse me, council, may I? Next Monday night will be our Christmas gathering. Diane, do we come in early for that, or do we do it afterwards, or
You can come in early. Probably, I'd say 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? And come ready for snacks, right? We'll have snacks?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we to bring snacks, Diane, or?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we
So
are.
give me a call and let me know
Getting
what you
some
are.
cookies.
Yeah.
I'm getting cookies.